I took part in your yogic hangout session. That's what it's called, yogic hangouts, and which was really, really powerful and so beautiful, because it helped to start to really give me some deeper understanding about concepts that, here in United States and in the West in general, people have lots of ideas about what yoga is. And lots of people claim to practice yoga, and but getting some insight through the yogic hangouts, and of course being able to share with the other amazing people that were in my particular hangout session, helped to really bring some clarification from me.
Beautiful. And that was the power of social media. Sitting in India, and we can connect with all the people, and we can share our wisdom together.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. And your humbleness to to learn and to receive that knowledge, that is so very powerful. So can you share about your story? What do you do, and how you are drawn towards this music world and every single thing? We would love to know.
Sure. So I grew up in the US, and I came from like a regular working class family. So like lots of working class people, when their children start to grow up and start to think about a profession, they're expecting that their children are going to choose a profession that's going to move them further than their parents were.
Yeah.
They wanted progress. So they were expecting me to become some type of university professor or something. But from a very young age, probably I'd like to say around what would be in India like 6th standard, 7th standard, around that age. I started, because I was a very shy child. I had come from a household where there was lots of addiction issues. And so there was some abuse related to those addiction issues. And so that made me very shy, because I learned very early on it was best to be shy and not get noticed. That way you can avoid getting a thrashing from your father who's drunk or who's high. And watching my mother, unfortunately suffer lots of physical abuse, I was very shy. But around that time, 6th standard, 7th standard, I discovered that I was really drawn to music. And at first, it wasn't any desire to be a musician. It was that I heard the words that were being sung. So I started paying very close attention to the stories. And I realized that people were telling stories that I could identify with, even as a small boy. And then I had some amazing music teachers in school who realized that I was really drawn to this, and they started giving me a chance, taking their classes, sometimes staying after school hours were over to sit with me and share knowledge with me. And I realized very quickly, like, this is the one thing I'm good at. I wasn't a good athlete. I tried sports. It was horrible. I had no athletic inclination whatsoever. And even though I was considered pretty smart, I was so shy that in academics, I didn't really stand out because I was trying to hide. But music was the one place where I felt like my voice could come out and I would be safe, because my teachers made me feel that way. It was okay. Express yourself.
I can completely relate here at that point. Even, me also, I was also there in school and, completely shy kid, no kind of interaction, not participating in any form of, drama or anything. I used to hide behind. And even the parents never encouraged that, isn't it? So,
Right.
But while growing up, I realized that, no, this is powerful. There is a voice, because if you're drawn towards certain thing, we become naturally confident. So, yeah, I
Right.
can completely relate with that. Yes, please share ahead.
Yeah, no. And so then as I went through school, growing as a musician, studying, of course, I started off just singing. So I was singing first, you know, school music groups, choirs. And then I started picking up instruments. First, the electric bass. That was my second instrument. And
Do you
then
still sing? Do you still sing?
I do. I still sing.
Okay.
In fact, now people maybe know me a little more as an electric bass player, but at the beginning of my career, especially, I did more singing than anything. And then because I really started realizing I don't just want to play other people's music, I want to tell my own stories.
Wow.
I want to compose music. So then my music teacher started saying, well, then you have to find a way to start to get comfortable with a keyboard instrument, piano, or even guitar.
Beautiful.
So I chose the piano and I started to study and sit and, of course, write. Took me a long time before I would share any of my lyrics because I was too shy, but writing music. And so then, you know, for me, the clincher, I think, the final thing that really pushed me forward was that in 11th standard, my music teachers started to make me the music director of the school shows. They gave me the responsibility, even though I wasn't qualified, because Paragya, the reality is, you know, in 11th standard, you're not necessarily qualified to direct anything.
Yeah.
But they said, no, you're not ready, but we see potential in you. So the only way that you're going to actually grow into that potential is if we give you some responsibility.
Yes.
And so by giving me that responsibility, I was able to see, wow, I can really do this.
Wow.
And that was it. I mean, much to my family's, you know, sadness, when I told them I was going to pursue music, in fact, my family told me, well, if you go, we're not paying your university fees. You pursue music. You're only going to get paid for if you pursue something that we approve of. And I'm a stubborn guy. So I said, well, then I guess I'm going to have to figure out a way to go on my own. Yes. Because I wasn't going to give up music because it was the one thing that made me feel
alive.
And alive. Yeah. And that's
one question I want to ask, that you shared that, you know, your father was kind of drunk all the time and kind of abusive towards your mother also. Yeah. So how was it like growing up in such a family? What it did to you mentally and emotionally, and how overcome that kind of, you know, emotional impressions? Yeah.
Yeah. So, as a little boy, what it did to me was, so my father left when I was 5. By the time I was 5 years old, he left the house. My mother had had enough, and she had the strength inside of her. She found the strength to say, okay, even if I am sad to lose my husband, my children can't be around this anymore. This is not good for my children. But of course, anybody who knows anything about child psychology knows that between birth and about the age of 8 or 9 years old, many of the impressions, they're formed at that point.
100%, yes.
So I was so shy that I wouldn't speak to anybody but my grandmother. My grandmother was the one person that I felt safe around. But even in school, sometimes my teachers wouldn't even know I was in the room. I was so quiet because I learned, or I believed, or I came to believe as a child, that every time I opened my mouth to speak, that's when I got hit.
Okay.
You know, and my father, unfortunately, you know, he also would sometimes, in my case, burn. So he would like burn my skin. He would take a lighter or a cigarette and say, shut up, shut up, shut up. You know, he would yell and hit. So I came to believe in my mind, if I open my mouth, this is when I get hurt. So it's better if I keep my mouth quiet. So that behavior that I learned, also, even as I got, you know, a little older, and of course you're in 8th standard, 9th standard, you start to maybe associate with your friends.
Yeah.
But you don't stick up for yourself, and you don't speak up for the things that are important to you. And you maybe sometimes allow people to treat you in ways that are not healthy for you, and they're not okay. And I would even though you can't see it here on the screen, but I'm a tall guy, right? So I'm tall and I was big, but I got bullied. I wouldn't fight. So kids would come and say, push me around, and I wouldn't even fight back. I would just, stay quiet. So that was probably the biggest effect, was not being able to really speak up for myself, because I thought that speaking up for myself was going to cause me to suffer.
Wow. So it made you a kind of quiet kid and everyone bullied you. But as you started growing, your interest into music was also even more deeper. Then
Yeah.
I believe that music changed your life then. All the healing element, all the emotional impressions. In some way, it brought a big shift when you are here more confident and running the shows and meeting new
Yeah.
people, inspiring them. So
Yeah.
how music changed your life, emotionally, mentally, after that kind of impressions? Yes.
So I would say two main ways. One, the first way was that even from a young age, before I was even playing music, I was listening to lots of music. And I think I've shared this story with you before.
Yeah.
When I was about 11 years old,
Mm.
we have in the US like a national radio station, National Public Radio.
Mm.
And they would play music from around the world. And so around 11 years old one day, I turned on the radio and I heard this music. And I had no clue what it was, because it was not like anything I had ever heard in my life.
Mm.
And it was Ravi Shankar and Zakir Hussain playing
Yeah.
duo concert.
Mm.
And I heard this music and I was like, oh my God, this just blew my mind. So I sat listening to the music. My mother came into the room and said, are you crazy? What are you listening to? What is this? I said, I don't know. I don't know what it is, Mom, but I like it. So it was my introduction to Hindustani music.
Okay. Mm.
And then, because I was fortunate to have a godmother who was from Ghana, West Africa, I was always hearing music from around the world.
Okay.
So the first way that music changed me was, even though I was living in this world where I felt trapped, I felt suffocated, music was the first way in which I started to see that there was a world outside of
Beautiful.
where I was. It was a big world, and that there were people with lots of different ways of expressing themselves. And that even though I didn't understand, if there was singing, I didn't understand the language all the time. I didn't understand because it didn't sound familiar. There was still something that touched me on a deep level. And I said at a very young age, I have to. And so I would tell my grandmother, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to travel the world.
Wow.
And so that was the first way. The second way, which was more long-term, is that once I got involved in music, without me knowing it, the vibrations of the music, the act of playing the music and the vibrations going into my body as I was playing,
wow,
were doing something to me, and they were transforming my own neural pathways. They were transforming the ways in which I was seeing the world and thinking about the world. And as my vibration was changing from feeling the vibration, it started to align me with people who could help me go to the next level, right?
wow,
Would open doors for me to see other things. Sometimes it was older mentors, teachers.
yeah,
Sometimes it was my colleagues, my peers, who would say, oh man, like young people, oh, listen to this record. I just got this new thing. Listen to this. This is amazing music. So as I began to align, and in music or in healing arts, and specifically, we would call it sympathetic vibration. This idea that as you start to vibrate on one frequency, you start to come into alignment with the vibration of similar, people vibrating on a similar frequency.
wow, so
And
beautiful.
so that started to open up my world. And then every time that the world would open up just a little bit more, it would be a little more realistic to think, okay, I'm from this working class family, but traveling the world doesn't seem so unrealistic now, because I'm meeting people from other parts of the world. So if I'm meeting them, that must mean that somehow I'm supposed to start to think about those places and those people and how I can connect. So that's two of the ways. And then, I guess maybe the third way is that in my life, the deeper I've gotten into music, the deeper I've gotten into the healing aspect of music, specifically
Beautiful.
focusing on the healing aspect of music and what music is really supposed to be used for, because maybe before we ever had record companies or had something called a music industry,
Yes.
people sat around in their communities and played and sang.
Mm.
And, in certain communities, if people were ill, they didn't call a doctor per se. They called a musician and said, call the musician. This person is feeling ill. We need to sing or play or do something with music to realign them mentally, physically, spiritually. So that's led me on a whole other journey, which I would never have imagined as a small child, just getting into music. I just wanted to be a superstar like everyone else.
Wow. So you uncovered your hidden talents, your passions, which changed your life. All the limiting beliefs, all the doubts. At once, it was all cleared for you. It was so powerful.
The power of vibration, the power of music.
Yeah. So I would love to elaborate you more about how the power of music can heal people. We can call also about the physically, mentally, emotionally, how that works. Yeah.
Well, so every culture has some way in which they use music to heal people. So if you go to West Africa, for instance, there's a long tradition where the musicians really were the doctors, because the musicians were trained and they understood. Maybe to our ears from outside of Africa, we just hear somebody playing a drum. And we say, oh, that sounds very nice. It's a drum. But each specific tone means something. And the musicians are trained and they understand this tone affects this part of the body.
Wow.
This tone affects this part of the body. The low tones affect the midsection, the waist, the navel chakra area, things like that. These sounds affect the feet. And so as you learn, and of course, if it was Indian culture, then we understand that there are specific ragas for specific things. In Hindustani music, specific times of the day in which specific ragas are to be played, specific times of the year, right? Monsoon, right now you're in rainy season. There are specific ragas for the rain and for the rainy season.
Yes.
And those things are meant to align with the frequencies of Mother Nature. Right? They align, and this is ancient knowledge, right? So each culture everywhere around the world has something similar to that. And so part of it is based upon science, part of it is based upon faith. The idea that when a person is raised in a particular cultural context, if they believe strongly enough, oh, well, if I hear this raga being sung, it's going to touch my heart in a specific way. It's going to affect me emotionally.
Wow.
If I hear a specific instrument being played, whatever part of the instrument, like a sitar or, tambora or whatever the case is, tambora, excuse me, then it's going to affect my body in a certain way. And so the compositions are written in a way that is specifically designed to evoke certain mood, and mood affects the body. So if we're playing a joyful raga, then if a person is feeling depressed and they listen to this joyful raga, it's going to elevate the mood. And as it elevates the mood, it can actually start to heal the body, because the mind, of course, is connected to the body. So anything that's happening in the body is generally happening in the mind long before it ever happens in the body. It shows up in the
100%.
body
Yes.
much later on,
Yeah.
maybe years later. So music and the very skilled musicians who spend years and years studying these things, and the scientists also that spend years and years studying these things, when they apply this knowledge, if they're applying this very specific knowledge with faith, but also with the power of intention, because the human mind, right? The human mind is so powerful that a practitioner can direct that energy specifically to where it needs to go.
Wow.
It's part of the guru energy that's in each of us.
Yes.
Some call it intuition, right? But it's that connection with nature, that connection with the divine, and that understanding that this is my purpose. So that requires also that the practitioner, the musician, the composer, understands their Shwardama, their specific purpose.
Yeah.
My purpose here is not to just dance around and entertain people. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But my purpose is I've been given this gift by the divine. I've been given this gift by nature. How do I use it to uplift people?
Yes.
If people are suffering, if people need clarity, how do I use my gift? So each culture uses their own specific instruments. They have a specific way of thinking about what tones and what frequencies affect the body, right? And then they apply that knowledge, and as they do the work, their faith in the system begins to grow. They begin to understand how to send, how to direct energies. And then as that grows, as that becomes stronger, they become more effective in their ability to actually serve people through music, you know?
Yes.
Like if we were to talk about it, like from perspective of Bhagavad Gita, right? When Lord Krishna says, do everything as an act of worship.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? This idea that when I'm playing, I'm worshiping. And Westerners tend to associate that just with the God, with religion.
Yeah.
But if we understand that we're all an expression of the divine, then Praga, if you call me up and you say, Heshima, I'm sick, can you play something for me? I'm not playing for Pragya. I'm playing for the divine that is within Pragya. So I'm doing this as an act of service to humanity and to the divine.
Beautiful.
When musicians understand that, that's how. So it's a combination of science and soul, science and spirituality.
Beautiful.
Working together.
It was so delightful to listen to you about the music and the healing and uncovering our true potentials, knowing our Swadharma. You know, I have seen like very few people who are into this music industry having this kind of in-depth knowledge and this form of sincerity, you know. Also, there's one question I want to ask, that many people are drawn towards the music. Like, I want to, go into the music industry. I want to sing and all those things. But there's some form of fear that, what kind of career I'm going to build. What is the roadmap? How can I go ahead and do that? And even as you shared, the support was lacking. In India, you can become doctor, engineers, and, professors and whatever. Not other things like, becoming musicians or artists or any form of such thing. So for a student, for a teenager who is interested in music and stuff, how do you think, how can they design their career and later go even deeper into this knowledge to live a purposeful life, a fulfilled life?
So the music industry has changed a lot since I started out, And so the way that I would encourage young people who really, really feel like they want to work in the music industry is, number one, understand that the music industry is a big machine. So there's lots of different jobs in the music industry besides just playing music.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I had a student many years ago who really wanted to be a singer. And she worked very hard and she had a beautiful voice, but there was nothing that really made her stand out as a singer. But what she decided was, because her father was a lawyer, she decided she would go to law school and study music law, entertainment law.
Oh.
And she works in the entertainment business to this day. And she has a very, very successful life, meaning stable life. She's been able to live well, but she's also been able to be close to the things that she loves. She's been able to also be of service because she helps all of these artists, people like me, who don't know anything about the legal aspects of this business, who would get taken for a ride if it was up to us, you know? So there are lots of people who work in this industry who don't necessarily perform. There are also lots of people who work in this industry who no one will ever see.
Yeah.
They work behind the scenes. They're sound engineers. They learn the technical aspects. And the reality is, again, I make music, but if I don't have a great sound engineer to mix that sound properly and make it sound ready for television or ready for film or ready for the stage, then I'm just another musician. So that number one is understand that there are lots of ways to work in the music business. That being said, understand that it's the music business, and what you see on the outside can be very different from what actually happens on the inside.
Yeah.
There are success stories, but there are also horror stories. So if you're really interested in working in music, make sure that you're doing your research so that you can make an informed decision about what you want to set your feet down on in terms of your path. If you really decide, this is part two, if you really decide that you really want to be a performer, that's it. You have to develop discipline. You have to develop the discipline because there are millions of people around the world who are very talented musicians.
Yeah.
But in my job, no one calls me up. Like, I don't have to go punch a time clock, right?
Yeah.
So no one called me up in the morning and says, Heshima, have you been writing music today? Heshima, have you been practicing? Are you ready for this? Nobody does that. I have to do that on my own. So you have to learn to be self-motivated. If you say that something is your passion, your actions will prove to everybody that that's your passion.
Wow.
But without action, all you have is a pipe dream. So that means you have to decide. And if you live in a place, like let's say I'm talking to young people in India. Let's say you don't live in Bombay, you don't live in Delhi, you don't live in Hyderabad, where the southern film industry is, or Chennai. Then you're going to have to find teachers in the area you live in. And maybe they're not going to be near you. Maybe it's going to be, for a little while, YouTube teachers. You're going to go on YouTube, you're going to find information. Because when I started out Pragya, you had to go to a teacher. You had to sit every week and study.
Yeah.
There's no excuse now. We live in the information age. Social media is always providing outlets for people who want to learn something.
100%. Yeah.
I know people who couldn't cook when they got married, and YouTube saved their marriage, taught them how to cook.
Yeah.
Right? So there's opportunities all the time. But you are going to have to be the one who says, I said I want to do this. That means I have to make it happen. And as you commit and you take the steps, then the universe will start to put people into your path. Because you'll align, because your frequency will be so clear, and the universe knows, the divine knows, okay, this person is serious. Let's connect them with this person. Let's connect them with this person.
Beautiful. The roadmap that you shared is going to help so many people. And the way you shared that, you have to know deeply why you want to do this, because there are many people who are drawn by the outside thing, that is, the fame is coming and, being in front of the camera and stage. That is what they're drawn towards, not actually towards the music. And they're not aware about different aspects of it, the different opportunities. So that kind of awareness, studying, knowing that there are many possibilities. Even you are a shy person, you don't want to come in front of camera, there are many such opportunities. That's very, very important. Thank you so much for sharing this for all the people.